So we've got a bit of a treat for y'all today. We're doing something a little bit different, as you could have guessed. I think it's on. Make sure.
Is it on?
Yes. We are doing a little bit more of an informal interview sermon instead of the traditional sermon. This is twofold. One, that we can start to model how some of our one-on-ones and small group conversations are going to happen throughout our visioning process. We're about to enter into this listening campaign in this fall season. And so this will give you a little bit of a window into that, except the conversation topic isn't going to be what do you think about All Saints. Instead, the Percys here, Helen and Eric, are going to share a little bit about this premarital weekend that we had together. So they, as long as with the whole front row here, sorry, yeah, Lenny, that's okay. Joe and Nicole, Bob and Kim, Hadley and Chris, Brian and Sarah, my husband and I, we were all participating in a premarital workshop all weekend. And although it's geared for engaged couples that are preparing themselves for marriage, we also had some married couples there to have the experience as well. So we wanted to bring some of that back to the congregation and share with you this new thing that we're doing. So first of all, thank you so much for being willing to have this conversation, for allowing to share some stories with me, allow me to listen, and as we already agreed to, everyone else is eavesdropping on our conversation this morning. I am just going to set, again, Siri, I'm not talking to you. I'm going to set my timer just so that I can really focus on what you're saying. And that way, you know, my timer will go off and say, okay, that it has been about 10 minutes or so. And then that way we can stay on track and I can really focus on what you're saying. So I understand you've been at this weekend, and of course they are not engaged to be married. Y'all have been married 26 years. Fantastic. I'm wondering if you can share with us, what is life-giving about your relationship and your marriage? Can you share a little piece of what's life-giving?
I'd have to say that one of the most life-giving parts of our marriage is the fact that no matter the stressors in my life, no matter the stressors in our family, any things that are going on, there is somebody who always has my back. There's somebody whose main thought is not only about me and about our relationship. And I can have a marvelous day and come home and have that be celebrated, and I can have a really rotten day and come home and know that this is a safe place to be. And even when we have conflict, I know that in your heart of hearts and in my heart of heart, we have each other's best interest at heart.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that that with each other we can let our guards down, which we have up in the rest of the world out there, and we can be ourselves and truly support each other, even if it's just being there on the couch watching TV, but we're there for each other, and that we can let down the screens that we set up for ourselves in life. So.
That's awesome. I hear correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard you say, kind of, Erica, was this sense that in letting your guard down, you get to be raw and real and vulnerable with your partner in life, and that Helen, that he's got your best interest at heart. And, I feel that there's some similarities there in that life-giving spirit within your relationship that we find in our faith community and that we find in our relationship with God. There's a way in which, in our relationship with God, that we're able to be our real selves, just wholeheartedly whoever we are, how God made us, that we can be real and raw and authentic, and that we know that God has our interests at heart, that we don't have to have a self-centered or self-focused mind because we are a beloved child of God. And so in a faith community, we try to emulate that, right? We try to imitate that this can be a faith community where there is trust and acceptance. And so you can be your real, authentic, vulnerable self. You can let your guard down a little bit and be who you are in the faith community, trusting that, the leadership, we have everyone's interest at heart, We don't have strange, selfish motivations or something like that we're like, oh, we got to do this. But that we really are caring for the wider community. And I hear that that's reflected in your relationship as well as the community. That's awesome. So, as I mentioned, 26 years of marriage, right? So you spent a weekend at a premarital weekend workshop. Was that beneficial? Was it, oh, been there, done that? We've already worked through these problems. Why are we even here? I mean, can you kind of share was there some benefit, even being married for so long, to go through this type of experience?
Well, first, I think, we're glad that we didn't scare them off. So that was like
I hope not. They at least came today, right? They came back yesterday. They came today.
One of the things was, looking back on the things, after 2+ decades,
right.
to go back and explore some of the things, and having that perspective of having lived it, and how seeing what those expectations were and how they worked out over time, and to be with the engaged couples and watching them explore these questions, and allowed us to bring back some of the discussions that we had all those years ago.
Yeah, right.
I think it was absolutely useful and helpful.
Yeah.
We got to delve into ourselves a little bit, learn a little bit more about why we act some of the ways that we act and what triggers us.
Yeah.
And then giving some strategies to help us through that.
Right.
It helped us, looking back at our marriage, see how we grew through our relationships, and how we would manage some of these issues that came up early in our marriage, and how now we manage them. And we learned some new tools on how to help us through some of the challenges.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong. So I heard kind of expectations. There's a way in which we bring them to our relationships, we bring them to our jobs, we bring them to church, that we have this sense of expectations. And sometimes our expectations are met, and that's awesome and fantastic. Sometimes our expectations we're not really aware of those expectations, and we hold them. And sometimes they're unmet. And we can really get in kind of a bind, but naming what were some of my expectations, were they met, were they not met, and how can I just name that, kind of naming the expectation sort of takes that power away for like holding you captive. And then, Helen, I heard you talk about really getting to know yourself. Yeah, that is an important piece, that the more we know ourselves, the better we can raise our own awareness and be a healthier person in a relationship. And I think the same thing is true within our faith community, within our relationship with God. Like, the more we get to discover and learn about ourselves, the healthier we can grow in our relationship with God, be a functional, healthy member of the community, recognize, oh gosh, that's, just my tendency here getting in the way. Maybe I need to step back. Or maybe that's an unmet expectation that I'm butting up against. How can we work through it? And I loved the reflective piece I think you both kind of hit on of, yeah, we can look back and say, we've been together 26 years, or I've been in this faith journey for 6 years or 10 years or 50 years, or I've been a part of this faith community, and look how far we've come. Look what we've learned. There has been conflict. There have been arguments, but we've worked through them. And not only we can recognize the gifts that we use to work through conflict, but we can learn new strategies. And we said this at the 8 o'clock, and I'll say it again. This is not like the sermon part, but just like a sharing of wisdom that Bob and Kim are down here. They were our facilitators, good friends of Mother Adrian and Sean. And they talked about how in an argument or a fight or a conflict, you're usually like head on, right? Like me against you. And use this different perspective to say, if you instead sit next to each other, right, and put the problem out here, the argument out here, that it's you two together against and attacking the problem in a sense of solidarity way, instead of over and against, which I think is just fantastic for anyone to learn, right? This is just good knowledge. We can do this in church community, in our relationships at work, a great way to shift our perspective. And part of that, though, is having a little bit of a humble nature, which really brings us to our gospel passage. That in our gospel passage, we hear the tax collector, we hear the Pharisee, and we hear this over and against, right? Often in life, we like, compare ourselves. Oh, thank God I'm not like them. Oh, thank God our relationship isn't like theirs. Oh, I'm better than that, right? And at the end of the day, Jesus' little nugget of wisdom at the end is saying that no, it's really about being humble, and being humble before God, being humble before your partner. And so can you share a little bit about how is being humble or placing aside your pride has helped or been a piece of your relationship?
I think it's been key to our relationship. I think we spend so much of our outside lives telling people how good we are. For our businesses, I have to fill out a little sheet saying why I deserve to continue to be in my job, what good things I did.
Right,
A lot of people have to do that.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of our public-facing lives explaining how we ought to be considered good. And it's amazingly refreshing to be able to come into our relationship and know that I don't have to put up that face, that I can be vulnerable, that I can say I don't have to be the one who knows everything, and
Right.
I don't have to expect you to be the one who knows everything,
Yeah.
and work through things together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the keys is that we both bring strengths to the relationship. Some of the strengths are different, some of the strengths are the same, and to be able to step back and allow the other to do, and even if it's a like strength, is to celebrate the other doing, whatever that the strength may be, and I think it folds into we've always. In our relationship and how we brought up our kids and all that is to set the example of being the servant leader, which requires a fair amount of humility to be able to step back and that there's nothing as a servant leader that's below me, and so that showing that I think builds community. And strengthens the relationship.
That's wonderful. I love that terminology of servant leader and really the vulnerability that you were talking about, Helen, in being humble. And I feel like we bring that to our relationship with God and to our faith community, that there is a way in which we can humble ourselves and be vulnerable. And when we do that, when we allow our pride to get out of the way, we really can be a servant leader. Because how many times do we go through life and we're like, no, we're just trying to get this thing to happen. Like, we're going to make it work. Come on, God. And meanwhile, God might be saying, take a second, take a beat, take a breath. I've got you. Sure, you might think that you're good at this, but let me work through the situation. Can you take a moment, humble yourself, get your pride out of the way, and watch the Spirit move in the way that she does that can really be life-giving. And that can really bring out some strengths that we perhaps didn't even know we had. Because in order to let your partner share his strength, even if you feel like you've got that gift, that there is a little bit of swallowing ego and saying, yeah, I'm going to let you shine, And so thank you both so much. My little watch here is buzzing at me. This is our time. So I really appreciate you sharing. Any other last thoughts that you wanted to share with our community?
I wanted to thank the newlyweds for coming today, and I wanted to thank you for letting us be a part of your weekend because it was really meaningful.
Excellent. You good? We're good? All right. What she said. So I hope that you all were able to get a little bit of wisdom from this conversation, from eavesdropping. Thank you guys so much. to hear how important it is to continue to nurture our relationships, whether it's a intimate relationship that we're in a relationship with a partner, married or not or whatever, or whether it's within the faith community, right, or even in our family systems, that it's important to maintain those relationships even after, nearly 3 decades of going strong. You can still learn new things, right? We can still learn at any age. God's Spirit is still speaking to us and inviting us to explore ourselves deeper so that we really can live our best lives, be our best selves, be authentically who God created us to be. Amen. Thank you, guys.